Commission workshop for Monday, January 13th, 2025. If I can please have the city clerk call the roll.
Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell. Here. Commissioner Howington.
Here.
Commissioner Lully.
Here.
Commissioner Santiago. Here. Vice Mayor Harriet.
Here.
Mayor Villa.
Here. If we can please stand for the pledge, and I would ask Commissioner Lully to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. This time we're going to enter into business. Section 4A, Architectural Design Standards for Non-Residential. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, Mayor, Commission, City Manager. So today we are talking about some architectural design guidelines. Staff, hold on one second. There we go.
Well, I'll be on.
So back in 2007, 2008, an urban design book was presented to the Commission, and it was never officially implemented. The packet contains, your City Commission packet contains your urban design pattern book and architectural design guidelines that I wrote for the City of Sanford back in 2016. The only architectural design guidelines that the City of Deltona has is the Enterprise Commercial Overlay, which is along Doyle Road, DeBerry Avenue, and Enterprise Road. And the purpose of guidelines is to ensure design of non-residential sites, landscaping, and building architecture, and the desire for quality developments and creating places for Deltonians to live, work, and play. The purpose of design guidelines is to enhance the general appearance of developments, maintain and improve the quality of life, and protect the value of properties, which will in turn help attract future development. And here are some examples of development within the city that have no design guidelines. As you can see, there's blank walls, no building mass, no architectural mass, and no building details. And here's another example of no design guidelines, and this is due to poor building siting orientation. The building should be located near the front property line, and buildings should be oriented to help define the street and encourage pedestrian traffic and define a space. Here are some examples of some good design, which include facade articulation, pedestrian style, and architectural mass. The building mass provides a base, middle, and a top. The base of the buildings are designated by decorative banding, veneers, changes in colors, and materials and textures. The middle of the buildings distinguished through the use of colonnades, awnings, or other building elements that provide a change in wall plane. And the tops of the buildings shall be defined by distinct roof forms, pronounced eaves, parapet design, and/or cornices. And here's an example of proper building orientation. The buildings are oriented towards the streets, which encourage pedestrian traffic and defines a space. Thank you. And staff is looking for feedback if the City Commission wants staff to move forward with architectural design guidelines.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harriet.
I think that this is the next step in making. In case you couldn't hear me, I think this is this next step in making future development in the city of Deltona elevate the city to the next level.
Right.
Commissioner Lully, then Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
Thank you. I agree. I think that we need to move forward with this. What I would like to see is both our brand for the city and the architectural guidelines, if possible, be cohesive. So that means, the font that we use on any of the signage or whatnot for the city should also match what we're using in other applications. I know that's kind of cross-department, but I think that would give a whole picture when you're looking at doing this throughout a city. I think that's what I want to say for now. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Villa-Vasquez, then Commissioner Santiago, then Commissioner Howington, then Vice Mayor Harriet.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So is this like going forward with future developments within the city, commercial areas? Is that what you're saying?
This would be for non-residential going forward.
Right, for commercial areas? So
Yes.
this is the designs that we're looking for,
What we're looking for
or
is,
elements?
we're looking to create design guidelines, and if there's a particular architectural style that the commission wants us to focus on, we can certainly do that. But we'll be bringing different options that developers can choose to make the development a quality development.
Can you give me a little breakdown of what kind of elements because I know that if a restaurant comes to Deltona, to a specific place, they have their own design, they have their own look, the building has their own look.
So there's an example of a Taco Bell, which is not your typical prototype Taco Bell.
Right.
So if we have design standards in terms of articulation, in terms of requiring awnings, different materials on the buildings, then the developer would have to adhere to that. There's another example of a Waffle House. That's not their typical Waffle House design. So they added more window treatment, which they don't typically include. And there's an example of a Winn-Dixie that's not their typical Winn-Dixie design. So the power's in the commission's hands on what they want to see out there in the community.
And they will go for that? They will allow us to change their designs? Because some stores are known because of their look.
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Yes.
And
Okay.
Commissioner, to piggyback off that point, there would still be an ability for a developer to come in and seek a variance. So, for instance, you have a business with a certain design guidelines that they adhere to, certain brand colors. They could apply for a variance to these guidelines. And then that would be in the commission's hands as to whether that would be approved or not. But I do want to throw out one little tidbit. There is very famously in New Mexico the only McDonald's with a turquoise sign because they did not permit the yellow because it was in conflict with their preservation of natural beauty. So it's possible.
Okay. Okay, so I think we need to come up with it quick, because I know that the Deltona Plaza, I think, is working with the city on a really great plan, which is going to be...
Out parcels.
Huh?
Out parcels.
They're going to be by the road, right? Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think this will be a good time to share with them. Thank you.
And staff can definitely share with the applicants of Deltona Plaza. Nothing's submitted at this point, so we would be able to, if we get working on that, and staff can definitely enforce any design guidelines that the commission may approve in the future.
Yeah, I think that his plan was to work with, at that time, he was to work with Jessica and them. So, yeah, that'll be great. Thank you.
Commissioner Santiago, then Commissioner Howington.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jordan. That was great. I can't believe that back then in 2008, the City Commission did not go forward with it. I think it's time that we move this forward, improve the quality of life for our residents, and it's a way of leaving our children, our grandchildren, a legacy, and making Deltona a great place and a place to be proud of. So I appreciate your time putting this together and fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Howington, then Vice Mayor Harriet.
So based on what I'm hearing, if it will be allowed, I'd like to get a consensus on if we can do a zoning in progress if everybody is interested in this sort of thing and implementing the architectural guidelines?
We're in a workshop, is that still permissible?
We can receive the direction, and then the zoning in progress legislation would be drafted and officially adopted at a commission meeting.
Do we not have one already in place?
Not for architectural design guidelines.
Okay, so
Okay.
you asked for a consent. Sorry, I'm looking at different ways. If we can have the secretary just do a verbal vote.
Commissioner Villa Vasquez?
Yes.
Commissioner Caldwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Howington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lilly?
Yes.
Commissioner Santiago?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harriet?
Yes.
Mayor Villa?
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Vice Mayor Harriet?
I think that was an excellent suggestion, direction.
Yes.
I want to go back to what Commissioner Lowley was talking about with bringing in the city branding. If we could provide direction to staff to come up with some branding options. I know that that's not the basis of this meeting, but I think that would be this is a good time, a good segue to move forward with some of those changes if they could work on that.
Commissioner Colwell, and then Commissioner Lully.
Yeah, I was going to, with Ms. Hollington there, I was going to make the same suggestion. I do have one question. This will include repurposing and rezoning of existing buildings and stuff?
We can put regulations in there for redevelopment if it's what I did in Sanford. If they were redeveloping more than 50% of the building, then they'd be required to adhere to the new regulations.
So I'm going
we
to use
can
the
definitely look at
Aldi,
that.
for example, that would include that.
Say that again?
I said like the Aldi and the Winn-Dixie transformation going on how that would include that?
Because it's going on now, no. But if
Well, I mean, if in the future,
Correct,
because
yes,
it's only
yes.
50% of the building Aldi is
Yes.
using, I believe. Okay. That's it.
Commissioner Lully.
Thank you. When we talk about the look, we have the look from 2008, the aesthetic book. Is that what you're recommending we adopt? Or I know you also included the Sanford example, right?
So that's where we're looking for feedback from the commission. Staff is going to be working with RVI, which is our consultant in the back, to help us draft these guidelines using the design pattern book and also possibly Sanford's, and they'll look at other examples throughout the state.
Since I became aware of the lookbook for Deltona, I thought that was, unless anyone was opposed, I thought that was tremendous. And I think it touched on everything from the signage to the benches. I mean, to me, that was the direction that I personally would go with, again, unless there was, staff was opposed to it because X, Y, or Z.
So thank you, Commissioner Lilly. Are you finished? Yeah. I will agree with Commissioner Lully. I think even then giving it a little update, because that book actually gave 4 or 5 different options even on the signage, but an update wouldn't hurt. One of the questions that I have, and I don't know if this is kind of intermingling things, but within that, can we also address some of the situations sometimes we have with blight? I'll give you a good example. We had for a long time, and before the commissioner, Santiago, became a commissioner, we had an issue with CVS on Howland Boulevard and Elkham. It was just not painted. It was really blighted. Is there anything we can put in those regulations to make sure that that's not a reoccurring issue?
I'm going to defer to legal on this.
So what you're describing is really a code enforcement issue.
Okay.
So
Okay.
our code specifies what are the standards. If you're not adhering, we can enforce.
Okay, got it. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
good.
So our next section will be Chapter 74, and I'm going to bring up Alexis Crespo from RVI Consulting.
So we're entering Section B, Amendment to Chapter 70, General Provisions, and Chapter 74, Administration.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alexis Crespo. I am Vice President of Planning with RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture. It is a pleasure to be here this evening and working with your staff on some of these code updates. In the back is Patrick Murray, who's project manager with RVI as well. This first workshop, we're presenting you with updates to your administrative procedures, so not as fun as architecture and building design, but definitely a necessary part of your code that we noticed needed some updating, working with your staff. So what we're looking at here is a really coordinated approach. You have procedures, standards, references to the application and permit types peppered throughout your code in 70, 74, 75, as well as 110. So we met with your staff and have drafted up an amendment to bring all those together, consolidate them into Chapter 74, try to make a really user-friendly code to cut down on applicants calling your staff and burdening them with time if they have set forth the different application types, the process to apply for those, where pre-apps are required, things like that, and in kind of one-stop shopping. Was our approach to this. We also wanted to improve clarity, and we found just some minor issues with sunshine law that we needed to address as well. So in your package, you'll see this is a draft, of course, tonight's just a workshop where we've done some strike underline of 70 and 74 to show you the intent of the changes. Chapter 70 is a very brief chapter, so the changes in there are very minor, just a simple reference to the Right to Farm Act, where some bona fide agricultural uses may not require permits, and then also just a minor change to note that your permit fees may be amended over time as the commission sees fit. Chapter 74 is where we made more changes, you'll notice. In the current Chapter 74, they described a certain number of your permits, but it really wasn't holistically walking the reader through everything from comprehensive plan amendments, LDC changes, PUDs, all the way through the platting and site construction permitting processes. So we consolidated all that together, as well as made it really clear which board or agency with the city is responsible for a review and approval of these different application types. So certain things go to the city council as well, or city commission rather. Planning and zoning board has their authorities. It also outweighs what the director has the ability to approve, as well as your staff and DRC. We also tried to create some user-friendly tables and charts where we can, if someone has a PUD rezone, they go to that table, they're going to go on Municode, it'll hyperlink right to that section of the code, and they can say, okay, I have to have a pre-app. These are the application materials I'm going to need to submit. Here's the staff review process, and ultimately I'll have this number of public hearings in order to get my permit. So trying to, again, make it user-friendly. Something more substantial, I guess I'd say we're proposing through this, is breaking out your conditional uses into minor and major. Right now, conditional uses require city commission approval. We found in some cases with caveats that minor applications like a daycare with 5 or less children may be able to avoid burdening the city commission and go to a hearing before the planning and zoning board. Similarly, with the minor variances we're proposing, where there's just very minor reductions to setbacks, maybe parking spaces on a site, that can be approved at the administrative level by your director. So those were just some minor tweaks there. And then Jessica did a great job of kind of revamping your noticing process and creating a citizen awareness program and plan within the code, where the city staff, when an application comes in, they can say, hey, this really requires a neighborhood meeting before you get to a public hearing. So some of these things can be vetted out, worked out before it gets into this room, and you're dealing with it as the city commission. So that was incorporated based on staff's work previously. So tonight we were here to just get your initial input, and then we would have to take this through the public hearing process before your planning and zoning board, and then of course ultimately have you all adopt it at public hearings. And so we're happy to get your feedback and input on this item.
Commissioner Villa-Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you give me a little more information on the shortcut, my wording, approval process that will skip the commissioners?
Yes, in your final draft, we're going to bring in Chapter 110 into this. That's where you have your use table. And in that use table, there will be some uses proposed as minor and some uses proposed as major. Of course, at that hearing, you'll be able to say, I am not comfortable with this. I would like this to remain a major conditional use that comes back to us. Or you may say, this is very benign. I use the example of a daycare with 5 or less children we're proposing as a minor conditional use in that case. And so we tried not to be heavy-handed there with that proposal. But the idea is that lesser use types that won't have traffic impacts, noise impacts the same way other uses do could achieve that planning and zoning board approval as opposed to city commission.
So what you're saying is it would be approved at the P&Z level?
Correct. If the commission agrees with that, once you see the table, yes.
I have a problem with that. Sometimes the P&Z board misses things that the commissioners catch and vice versa. So, I mean, that's my opinion, but we can discuss it further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lully, then Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you. As it stands now, do we hear everything that comes before the P&Z board then comes to the full commission? Or am I incorrect on that? That's a question, I guess. Correct. Okay. This is the first place I've ever been where that's the case. Would you say it's the norm that that's not the case, like in most municipalities, most governments in Florida, that they have a setup like what we're proposing here, of some form or fashion?
I would say that we do work across the state and actively in 50 or so jurisdictions. I would say special exceptions, variances usually stop at a P&Z level, and then the county commission or city commission usually deal with the rezonings, the LDC amendments. But it's not atypical, and I would say the norm that those minor applications don't get to the city commission.
And I served many moons ago on the Nassau County, Northeast Florida Board of Conditional Use and Variance, I think is what it was. And in that particular case, there were instances where, so we could just approve it and then it's done. But then if that particular board denied it, the applicant could then appeal to the full commission. Is that what we could propose here? Or is that part of this?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Colwell.
In reference to the minor and the major, could you be a little more, give me a little more information on what a minor would be, especially in variances on setbacks and things? Are we talking about a foot, 2 foot?
The major and minor,
Thank you, Jessica.
the conditional uses in the land use chart I left on your table.
Okay.
So your conditional uses, the major are going to be the yellow ones, or the yellowish-orange ones, and the green ones are going to be your minor.
So you'll see bed and breakfast with a limited number of rooms could be minor. The daycare could be minor. Thank you. The green marks the ones that could be minor, treated as minor.
Okay.
And you'll see footnotes that limit the intensity of those uses in most cases. So we can do a page turn if you.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Vasquez here as far as, taking it away from us doing the final approval or the variance changes without us knowing. I have an issue with that myself.
Okay.
That's it.
Is this, before I go to Commissioner Howington, is this already what you guys are proposing as major and minor?
Yes. And that's going to be part of the next presentation as well.
Okay. Maybe I'm off, but can we actually have possibly maybe another workshop specifically for this, instead of having it come before the commission and having us vote and making the changes there? I think it'll be better for us to talk about that at that time, instead of at an actual commission and making changes, because when that happens, I've always said that I feel uncomfortable. It's like, okay, let's vote to approve it, and then the second time it comes around, the changes will be there. I'd rather just have the changes already done, so whatever we do, we know what we're going to do.
And Mayor, as Jordan alluded to, in the next item on the agenda tonight, we'll have a more in-depth review of this. So you can provide feedback then, and then if you'd still like another workshop, we can certainly schedule that.
Thank you, Zach. And also, maybe Jordan, this is for you. Is this where we can talk about the differences, like C1 to industrial, vice versa? That's the next one. Okay, got it. Commissioner Harrington, thank you.
Yeah, I was just wanting to confirm that we could potentially change some of these major versus minor. And then also to confirm, a couple weeks ago, we had the swimming pool variance come in front of us. Would that be something that would be captured in these minor changes?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. See no more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to go to C, amendment to sections 110-30 or 300 to 110-320 of Article 3, establishment of classifications and official zoning map of Chapter 110 zoning. Jessica.
Good evening, Jessica Entwistle, Assistant Director for the record. Tonight we're going to go over the LDC Chapter 110. That's the chart that you guys were given. I also gave you a copy of the PowerPoint. All right, while the red line does look scary, that's in the binders that you guys were given, the updates do include fixing spelling errors, streamlining allowed uses, expanding and standardizing commercial zoning, expanding commercial or industrial uses, and introducing the use chart. The use chart is in your packet, but I also provided it, like I said. Commercial updates include updating allowed uses by streamlining a lot of the old uses that could be categorized together, such as removing all specified retail uses like dry cleaning, pet stores, or pest exterminators, and allowing them just to be under retail use and services. The streamlining includes adding a government type use and an entertainment type use. Staff has added more uses within the commercial zoning districts, but requires a conditional use for uses such as tattoo shops, pet boarding within the C1 retail zoning district. We have the two new categories, the government type use, which will allow for fire stations, government and utility buildings, wells, libraries, parks, and those type of uses. We also have the entertainment type use, which will allow for bowling alleys, trampoline parks, arcades, and such. Staff has increased the uses allowed within the industrial zoning, which include government uses, medical offices, and entertainment type uses. Many of the uses remained within the zoning. All right, residential estate 1 is residential land that requires for an acre or more of land to build a home on. Residential estate 5 is residential land that has a requirement of 5 acres or more. Staff is asking for agriculture type uses to be used or allowed in the RE1 and RE5 zoning districts if the parcel is 3 acres or more. Communication towers will only be permitted in public and resource protection zones, and major conditional use is required for communication towers to be located in any other zoning district. In April, the City Commission requested staff to update Chapter 110 of the city's Land Development Code. Staff has reorganized and updated the code to be more consistent with Florida statutes and allowed more uses within the commercial and industrial type zoning districts. Land use will now be organized and easy to read with the new use chart. The chart depicts if a land is permitted in the zoning, if it requires a conditional use, or if it's not allowed. And do you guys have any questions?
Yes, we have Commissioner Santiago.
Yes,
And then Vice Mayor Harriet.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question as I was looking at this. The C1, does that allows the storage facilities in C1?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And if someone was going to do a storage facility, that would be under the industrial?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure it wouldn't be on C1, since we, one of the things that we're looking into is, improving our commercial and bringing good restaurants. And I just want to make sure we're not putting a storage facility in a C1.
Yeah, no, we don't allow
Okay.
that now, right, either.
Just want to make sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So before we go to Vice Mayor Harriet, I'm just going to take a really quick point of privilege. So we don't allow currently storage facilities to be built in C1s?
Correct.
Currently. So what is zoned over there by the movie theaters? And I'm not picking on anybody specific, but they're looking at building a storage facility there. And I thought that was, I mean, I know it's the activity center, but,
It's a BPUD. It's within the Deltona Village BPUD.
okay,
And the storage facility that's already built there is under an MPUD, so mixed-use plan unit development.
got it. Vice Mayor Harriet.
So I appreciate, similar to Commissioner Santiago, I really appreciate that we're moving the non-retail style uses out of commercial so that we can focus commercial on things that people can go to and receive a service or get dinner or that. So I appreciate that. For the ag uses for RE1 and RE5, I think with the kind of the popularity of urban homesteads and, people realizing the brokenness, if you believe it or not, of our current food system in this country, I think that 3.5 acres minimum should go away, and we just allow ag uses in RE1 and RE5 as they are zoned. That's my feedback on it.
Do you want to kind of expand a little bit on that? Do you mean like allow people with less than an acre to have goats on their property?
No, but the RE1 would be not less than an acre. That would be 1 acre minimums.
Okay.
So instead of having a 3.5 acre minimum and having an RE1 lot that happens to be larger than 1 acre, if you have an RE1 lot, then as long as it meets the requirements for RE1, which would imply that it's a minimum of 1 acre, they are allowed agricultural uses on that. I mean, any reasonable person's gonna, if they have a 1 acre lot, they're not gonna try to bring a cow and put a cow on 1 acre. But it would allow them to have chickens, more than 10 chickens, because quite frankly, 10 chickens at a half an acre is still, it's a little low.
I don't know how we got chickens in this.
I like chickens.
I don't
always go to chickens.
I don't disagree with you, but I just. No, we're not. Okay.
I know, I apologize for that. I wasn't on the commission, but I was at fault for a lot of that. But I think that's becoming a very popular thing, and I think it's a healthy choice, and it's one that my wife and I have chosen. And I wish that this commission would be more friendly to that. And I think this is an opportunity really for us to really be more friendly to that. So.
Thank you
Vice
for.
Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to clarify because, as they say, reasonable minds can differ and common sense isn't always common. If we could get kind of some consensus from the commission on what would be too heavy of a use at 1 acre so that we can exclude, like you said, a cow, a horse on 1 acre. Just so that we can include that, because that would help staff out in their.
I think that needs to be addressed with the code enforcement, animal control side. I mean, if you can reasonably sustain a cow on 1 acre, which if you look at UF-IFAS, which is not the end all be all, but they probably recommend 1.5 acres to 2 acres in Florida on our soils. But if you can provide a clean living area, if it's not obnoxious to the neighbors, then why are we trying to limit what somebody can do anyways, especially with the advent of miniature animals. If somebody wants a miniature cow or miniature donkey.
You want a miniature donkey, that's what you want?
I want a miniature cow, actually. My wife wants a miniature cow. She wants one of those miniature Highland cows. So.
We're going to go to, are you finished, Vice Mayor?
I am, thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to go to Commissioner Cowell, then Commissioner Harrington. I do want to hear from the public. I'm sorry I skipped the public. On my agenda, they're put towards the end, but I do want to hear from the public, especially on this specific topic. So Commissioner Cowell, then.
How we address the density in this, have we made changes to the density?
Did we make changes in the density? Is that what you asked?
Yes, that's correct.
We have not made changes in the density.
Okay. Are we going to make changes in density?
We can if that's what you're wanting us to do.
Yes. I'd like to see some changes in density.
Can you expand on what you'd like to see?
Less house per acre.
Okay. Across the board or?
Across the board.
Okay.
Commissioner Harrington?
I'd like to go back to what Commissioner Harriet just brought up. So I grew up in a farming community, and I know you can pack a lot of animals on a 1 acre parcel. and we have a lot of 1-acre parcels that reside deep within city limits. So I think that we probably should revisit that to really outline what our vision would be. I'm not saying it's off the table. I'd just like to see a little bit more discussion about that because there's potential for tax impacts. When you start changing the zoning, how does that impact tax rates and things like that? There might be things that we would have to deal with the county, and at this point, I just am not sure how that would impact everything. So if we could open that up for further discussion.
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that.
Commissioner Vila Vasquez, and then Vice Mayor Harriet.
Thank you, Mayor, but I'm along the line of Commissioner Hohenton. So I have half an acre, and I sure don't want a cow next to me.
You wouldn't be allowed to have one?
But my neighbor has a larger property. I'm just saying, again, you know, we have to look at where the property is, and I don't think it should be allowed in city limits, regardless of how big. But again, it can go for discussion.
So it would also depend on what their zoning is.
Okay.
I believe towards Deltona Boulevard, most houses are zoned R1, so it's just RE1 and RE5, which you find more commonly off of Doyle Road. They have the very large lots.
Yeah.
Lake Helen Osteen has a lot of them.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so it largely wouldn't impact a lot of, yes, they would be in the city limits because that's where we have jurisdiction over, but they wouldn't be in the more urban sections of town. And also, to your point about taxing, we're just changing the allowable use, not the actual zoning. And can we hear from somebody about whether that would actually change taxes? Because that's a good point.
So certainly if you are changing zoning into a category that allows certain tax exemptions, that would have an impact, and it's a decision of the property appraiser as well if they see a certain land use designation as a different value to your property. The likelihood of that happening in a grand scale is very small, and it would likely be something that would be initiated by the commission if we're changing large areas of Deltona to a different land use.
Yeah, because I'm not talking about actually changing the zoning. I want to be clear. I'm not talking and advocating to change the zoning. I think it needs to stay RE1 or RE5. Just change the add agricultural uses to the allowable uses. So hopefully minimizing the tax because we already have a lot of tax exempt properties.
Are you finished? Commissioner Lally, you're still on the board, by the way.
Thank you. I like the conversation we're having so far. I think these are all good points to make. Just want to say, after having New Year's Eve the other night and the explosions of fireworks everywhere that don't seem to get enforced, a cow doesn't bother me compared to that. So I would much rather have a cow as a neighbor than this 2 hours of noise. So I happen to like cows. So I like the conversation. I'm happy to keep having it.
And just for the record, I only have just over half an acre, so I still would not be allowed to have a cow.
Well, Commissioner Lally lives by the war zone over there, so.
And I wasn't talking about that. I got that too. I know. I'm surrounded. Give me the cows instead.
Can we hear from the public? Does anybody in the public want to speak? No?
No public comment?
Oh, none. All right. Before we move out of this section, I do want to bring something up, and I gave Jordan and Doc a copy of this, and then I will pass it on to the secretaries in the morning so they can give it to the rest of the commissioners and to Joyce so they can make it public. But today, and this kind of goes into this a little bit, today the Volusia County Roundtable of Elected Officials voted to start essentially a stormwater authority, which would somewhat affect building, right? So they would put things in place to ask for minimum stormwater standards for development, floodplain regulations and management, maintenance of stormwater infrastructure that serves multiple jurisdictions, management of flood mitigation, resiliency, and capital programs. So that's something that The county is somewhat initiated, and obviously somebody from staff will serve on that subcommittee or that authority, I guess, from a, what is it called, a GPA or something like that. But I think it's important that as soon as we get more information, we give it out to the public, the commissioners. That I will give in the morning to Sandy and Bridget so they can distribute it. But Doc does have it, and I know that somewhat impacts this, which I think it's positive because it helps us move in the right direction. Instead of having one elected official trying to do everything on their own, we're kind of teaming up as all the mayors in the different cities and staff members so we can have input from everyone. So Vice Mayor Harriet.
Would that just be an expansion of the local mitigation strategy working group at the county level? 'Cause that's what it sounds like.
I believe they're trying to strengthen it because St. John's Water Management will be somewhat of an advisor consultant on that as well. Army Corps of Engineers, there's a couple of people that.
Okay, and that's normal from a participation level on a similar board.
Yeah.
At the staff level, that's normal. So it sounds, if that's all they're doing, then that sounds phenomenal. What I want to caution us about is supporting anything that would take those stormwater decisions away from this commission. It is imperative that this commission maintain control over our stormwater in our city and not beholden to the county or other jurisdictions. And the reason why is because we need the ability to make ours more strict than what somebody else may think is enough. So.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and move to Section C. Oh, we just sit down, sorry. Section D, amendment to Section 110-319 of Article 3, establishment of classifications and a visual zoning map of Chapter 110 zoning.
Good evening, Mayor, Commission again, City Manager. So this last presentation is regarding plan unit developments. Staff analyzed existing PUD regulations to identify areas that were outdated and or not achieving desired income, such as community character. We've updated the regulations clearly define the Commission's goals, which are to promote quality development and enhancing open space. Plan development combines uses and or mixtures of uses with shared amenities such as parks, pools, trails, and they're managed by either HOAs or property owner associations. Traditional zoning is restricted, and a PUD is a special agreement between the City Commission and a developer, and allows for more creativity and flexibility. However, they still need to comply with local regulations regarding land use and density. There are 4 types of planned unit developments. You have residential, commercial, and industrial, and mixed use. The residential focuses on housing. Your commercial is a combination of commercial space, retail stores, and office. Your industrial is industrial uses, and your mixed use is a blend of residential, commercial, and sometimes industrial. And staff is recommending changing your business PUD to commercial PUD. These are your recently approved PUDs, which some of them are Catalina Point, which is a residential PUD, and this includes townhomes and villas. And then you have a business PUD, the Leha Business PUD, which includes medical business offices with a storage facility and RV parking, and that's located along Howland Boulevard. As stated earlier, the current regulations are very broad, and they're not achieving the desired outcomes, such as community character for the city. These updated regulations will provide quality housing, shopping, and places of employment. It ensures that all new development is of highest possible quality. The benefits of updated regulations are green spaces, which will include more open space, parks, and natural areas. There'll be walkability, which encourages walking and biking. You have more amenities, swimming pools, clubhouse, playgrounds, walking trails. There'll be an aesthetic appeal, which they'll be visually appealing, preservation of natural areas, and there's also a sense of community when there's shared spaces and amenities. Here's some examples of a non-desirable residential PUD.
Oh, it's like Deltona.
No, it's actually not. I don't have any examples of Deltona. So I didn't want to shame anybody. So, but this, as you can see, this has a lack of amenities and a lack of landscape, and it's just extremely dense.
That's what we did.
Here's a successful commercial PUD. This is an Oviedo. It's pedestrian-friendly, has landscape and design characteristics. Here's a successful industrial PUD. This is in Jacksonville. Includes landscaping, preservation of environmental features, design characteristics, and screening of parking. And I believe this one is in Tampa. Includes some of the same features.
You got it swapped.
What's that?
That's I think Jacksonville. The other one, that's definitely Tampa.
Gotcha. My bad.
275, not 295.
Here's a successful mixed-use PUD, which includes landscaping, preservation of environmental features, community amenities, integrated development. This contains commercial, office, and residential. And the residential here is vertically. Here's a successful mixed-use PUD where the mixed use is actually horizontal. You have your commercial to the north, you have your multifamily, and then you have your single family. And the reason I showed this to you was because we're proposing in the new regulations that mixed-use PUDs can be either vertical or horizontal based on the integration. And then just a summary of our modifications. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Harriet, then Commissioner Avila Vasquez, then Commissioner Howington.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a reason to allow horizontal mixed use?
Is there a reason?
Yeah, is there a benefit to horizontal mixed use versus vertical?
We just got rid of it. We just voted to get rid of it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
We're not allowing horizontal mixed use anymore, are we?
My suggestion is to allow it for mixed-use PUDs if it's the proper project and it's integrated as shown in some of the examples. And in the regulations, we're providing examples of how it needs to be properly integrated.
But we did it for the live local. That's what we did it for.
You did it for strictly multifamily.
Got it.
Correct.
So-
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So I want to make sure that when we make these updates that we have a clear delineation of when open space is allowed to be used, and that open space cannot include required retention space or wetlands or otherwise unusable land. I think it's inappropriate when a developer comes in and says, oh, well, we can't use this, 5 acres or 10 acres of wetlands, so we're just going to call that open space because that's the residents that move in there can't use it either. So I want to make sure that we're not including that.
That is addressed in the updated regulations.
Okay,
yes.
perfect. And then I would also, I don't know if this is the best place for it or not, but anytime that we have a requirement for a developer to install a lift station, be it stormwater or sanitary sewer, that lift station be elevated with additional fuel tank as part of the PUD. Because that is something that's extremely expensive to go back and retrofit, and it's something that the city needs to be working on retrofitting and come up with a plan of our own. So we should make sure that any new ones put in are elevated with a generator and have an additional storage capacity for fuel. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question. All this that you showed us about the design of how things are going to look, this is what you're going to propose to the new developers, right?
Correct, yes.
In whatever land they own, because there's really not much that the city owns.
Correct.
So this is new sites going up.
Yes.
Okay. Mixed use, separated. To me, mixed use and live local is the same thing. So we just turned down a live local, mixed use, whatever project. How does this fit into it now that we turn one down? How do we bring it back to be approved?
So I just want to say that project is not a true mixed-use project, and I'm just going to end it there, and I'll let the attorney go.
Yeah, so, and I also want to draw a distinction between live local development and mixed use development. So when we talk about live local, these are affordable housing projects that are availing themselves of the Live Local statute, which entitles a developer, if they meet the criteria, to an administrative approval process. Because Deltona has less than 20% of our land designated as commercial or industrial, we are also able to enforce the requirement that these Live Local developments be mixed use in character. So what we've done previously is, in order to ensure that those projects truly are mixed use and are in keeping with the character that Deltona is seeking for its residents, that those be of the vertical mixed use variety, and also because generally a Live Local project is going to be a more discrete area than a PUD. A PUD could be, tens, hundreds of acres. So in some cases, a horizontal mixed-use project may be appropriate. Because PUDs are a discretionary approval by the commission, you always have the discretion to say that you don't like the way a PUD is laid out, that you don't like the mix provided in the PUD. And certainly these enhanced standards provide staff with stronger language, stronger tools with which to evaluate a PUD that comes in. All that being said, if it is the will of the commission that we only want to see vertical mixed use, that can certainly be addressed. Where I think we would be missing out is Jordan, if you can, we're on the horizontal mixed use PUD. So you have here a PUD where you have what is essentially a village, and I know in the visioning process we've talked about this idea of a collection of villages. So you have a single-family neighborhood adjoining to a multifamily neighborhood, which then adjoins to a pedestrian-friendly, quote-unquote, downtown, a town square. So this, to point to Jordan's example, would be an example of a successful mixed use. I think we can all point to mixed use that is horizontal that would be unsuccessful, right? This would certainly not be successful if it was a drugstore and a multifamily building. I wouldn't call that a successful and impactful mixed use PUD. I would call that an apartment building in a rock parcel. So I hope that was helpful.
No.
Okay.
I'm just confused because this is, to me, Live Local, the way it was explained in a seminar that I went to, Live Local was commercial apartments, right?
No.
That's how it was explained. Commercial apartments. That's how Live Local was explained in a session that I went to. It was a League of City ethics, whatever training that I went to. But now we're separating them, right? We're making single, multi, and then the commercial. So now, what happened to that explanation when this Live Local first started? It seems like it's changing as we go along.
And that's where I want to draw the distinction between Live Local, as you're describing it. Yes, a developer coming in under the Live Local Act and under our regulations would be required to do vertical mixed use. What we're talking about here is a planned unit development. So this is not someone that is coming in under the Live Local structure. They're coming in seeking a land use change to a PUD.
Okay. Understand now. Thank you. Because, so then we can identify it as Live Local. You know what I'm saying? Because it sort of confuses people that understand Live Local to be one thing and then land use to be something different than Live Local, what the requirements are for Live Local.
Just for clarification, Commissioner Villa-Vasquez, Jordan and I had a Zoom meeting with then Senator Hudson, who was the actual author of the Live Local Act, and there was some missing language that I believe the legislator is going to take care of this year, but there was some gray area. So we had the ability, which is what we did and finalized on the December 23rd special commission meeting, to make it stricter where they couldn't do horizontal.
Okay, because he was the guest speaker at that time.
Yeah.
And he was the one that explained it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, are you finished, Commissioner? Yes. Commissioner Howington and then Commissioner Lully.
Jordan wanted to.
Oh, go ahead, Jordan. I apologize, and then we'll go to Commissioner.
Back to the, also, if an applicant wanted to come in and just build multifamily, which is not Live Local, it has to be mixed use per what you approved last month as well.
Yeah.
So you have Live Local mixed use, you have regular multifamily apartment, which has to be vertical mixed use, and then we're proposing for the mixed use PUDs, either vertical mixed use or horizontal mixed use, and we have the tools and the regulations, so if we use the tools, we'll get a product like that.
Commissioner Howington?
So if we consider the vertical and the horizontal commercial development within the mixed-use PUD, I would like to ask that we focus on having the commercial certificate of occupancy first, similar to like what we did in the last regulations, because I'd like to reduce the amount of traffic having to go outside of these PUDs. And if we build the commercial first, then that's going to reduce the risk of traffic. Adding on to what Commissioner Harriet said, I'd like to add generators to those lift stations, because that's something that's not being provided and is currently being provided by the city, and that should not be on the backs of our residents. Stormwater systems within these PUDs should not be owned by third parties. If we want to have more control of our stormwater systems, the city needs to be in control of the entire system. If it feeds into a basin, we need to have control of it. If a third party has control of it and they don't maintain it, our residents are going to flood. And there's nobody else to blame except for the people who allowed that PUD to come in. So we need to fix that immediately. We have several subdivisions that own their own stormwater systems, and that's a risk. So they need to be deeded back to us. And then also, will we be doing architectural guidelines for residential PUDs?
Yes.
Okay. And is there zoning in progress in place for those things?
We currently have a zoning in progress right now for PUDs.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Commissioner Lully.
Thank you. I like what I'm hearing so far. Generators, that's, to me, is a given, and it's every other city I've been in with new development. You see the generators every month, they kick on. You hear the diesel engine, and then it goes off as it's testing. We need to be doing that here. We don't need to be having staff running around after a hurricane, bringing portable generators or bypass pumps around. That's a no-brainer, so I think that's good. Are there other parts of this where, and I know we talked on an individual basis, where we were talking about, the future of buildings and homes with, I guess, smart buildings and smart homes. Is this also where we'd address having, the conduits put in place to make sure that you can get the proper wiring into the building, even if in 20 years we're doing something different than we did today?
Are you talking about a generator hookup?
No, this is more about let's give you an example. AT&T fiber, right? We used to use telephone wires made of copper. Now we use fiber. When they're overlaying it now, in order to get that all the way into, like a central wiring point in the building, for example. Follow me?
So we could.
That makes sense.
We could address that to a certain extent by ensuring that there are the correct easements for utility access existing. The enforcement of installation of conduit is really more on the utility side. However, we can definitely ensure that the access is there and properly provided.
So this is, and I think this would apply to the individual structures that would be allowed under the zoning, because essentially you're taking the conduit from where the utilities side of it ends and running it into a central place of the building, which would be the property owner's responsibility. The problem is now you have, when you're overlaying with fiber, you got wires running up buildings. It's not very attractive. When you put a conduit in, you could run whatever kind of line you needed for the next 1,000 years. So But the generators, that's like the biggest thing. I mean, we gotta do that like yesterday.
You good?
Thanks, yeah, thank you.
Before I go to Vice Mayor Harriet, Jordan, right now, if, in certain areas, if a builder is coming or a developer, and I'm going to use examples here, so I'm not picking on anybody specifically, and they have 10 acres, right? And they can build 4 houses per acre, right? Just using that as generality. And within those 10 acres, 5 of those acres are wetlands, right? They are still going back and saying, well, I can technically build 4 houses per acre, I can build 40 houses on that property. They are counting the 5 acres of wetlands without necessarily buying the mitigation credits to include them. Is there any way we can restrict that where it's specifically you're using the true acreage that you have to build, where you would be forced to have to ask for whether it's a variance or a rezone or something like that? Because I see that even before I got elected, a lot of developers like to do that. They come in, hey, I want to build 100 houses on this amount of acreage. Well, half of this is all wetlands, but still the code is not clear on specifically how many houses they can build on their true usable acreage.
Yes, that can definitely be addressed, yes.
Net buildable acres.
Yes, so can that be addressed?
Yes.
Perfect. Vice Mayor Harriet.
To continue on what Commissioner Howington was going with having those stormwater facilities deeded over, I love that track, but if we're going to do that, I want to make sure that those facilities are built to a much higher standard so that maintenance burden and repair burden is not put on the backs of existing residents. We can mitigate that burden. But gosh, that would make it so much easier if staff could just go out and address those things, and then those be built to a much higher standard. So hopefully staff doesn't even have to go out and address those things.
Right, Commissioner Howington.
To add on to that, we do have a current situation where the stormwater systems have not been built correctly, and I know that we are still working on some of those, and I want to make sure that that does not get lost, because if we do go this route down in the future, we need to make sure that those systems are shored up, and one right now is currently breaching during hurricanes, so that's a problem that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed immediately.
Like yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes, and if I need to get a consensus vote on that, I'd be happy to ask for it.
Well, I think that's a given. I mean, I don't think we should be even signing off on people's bonds until we have made triple sure that things are working correctly. I mean, I know a lot of us on here and former folks who are on here have gone to different open HOAs, and thankfully on some, and I won't call any specific HOA out, but we still owned the bonds or had a hold of the bonds and were able to get them to come back and fix some of the things. We shouldn't just be releasing bonds until we literally make at least triple check that everything is working the way they're supposed to. Because that can all look beautiful, amazing. What good would that do us if the water's like halfway up in the roof? I mean, it makes no sense. Commissioner Lally?
Thank you. I agree with that point. And to that end, I would like to build some more parameters into what we're doing for planning and developments as it relates to the public infrastructure and utilities. A lot of municipalities require, for example, the streets to be milled and resurfaced once construction of the development is done, before it's turned over to either, I guess it would be to the city. So I'd like to see that done. We also have in my district similar, I guess we'll put in quotes, failures of the stormwater systems, and even some of the public infrastructure. I mean, the roads are destroyed from all the oil and other fluids that occur when you're building 150 homes or whatever it may be. So I'd like to see that put in there as well, because we need to be turning over pristine infrastructure over to the city before we take over something that's damaged or failing. And I guess in a couple of cases, I was told we were lucky in that, the resurfacing was done late in the process, but we can't rely on luck. We got to rely on code. Thanks.
Well, one last thing on my end before we go to Vice Mayor Harriet. Do we currently, are we currently asking at a minimum some of these developers if they're able to kind of build on the infrastructure that just maybe half a mile out from where they're at currently?
So under our concurrency management and under the proportionate fair share structure, if there are off-site improvements needed, the developer does have to either complete those improvements or contribute their proportionate fair share through those agreements so that the city or county, whoever is the holder of the infrastructure, can then complete those improvements.
Got it. Vice Mayor Harriet.
And the last thing that, to Commissioner Lilly.
Your mic.
And kind of going towards your comment, but on the city side, anytime the city, I'd like to see this not, I don't think this is necessarily the proper place for it, but I would like to see an ordinance update. Anytime the city has to do any road work, I'd like to see the repaving take place across the whole width of the road and not just fixing one lane or, one little patch. I think that's another step that'll make our city a little bit more user-friendly when it comes to our roadways. And just, you got to go 50 feet on either side of wherever they had to break asphalt, and then the full width from curb to curb. So if we could bring that back, an ordinance. There's a couple examples around the Central Florida area.
All right. Is there any comments or questions or concerns from the public? If you can please go where Jordan's at, just so you can use the mic, please. Just state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Dan Trojanowski. I'm at 1611 Meadowlark Drive in Deltona. Actually, I'm joining the Planning and Zoning Board coming up this week. Just to let you know, I am a certified Florida SEPTED inspector. I work in the insurance industry and do multiple all through the entire state. I guess it really goes back to the planned unit developments and then what you were going over first with the planning for the city for the design. My question is do we have any SEPTED elements? Because it's been really important over the last 2 years from the state's Tort Reform Act. As a matter of fact, your multifamily zoning here, they're not even going to be able to get insurance unless they follow those guidelines after next year. Is there any SEPTED requirements, and this is commercial and residential both, on your multifamily that's going to go through for the guidelines for the city going forward that they would have to abide by in the planning phase? Because a couple things is, one, it's planning the neighborhoods correctly. It's doing things, for those that aren't aware of what SEPTED is crime prevention through environmental design, putting your windows and your doors and your patios facing the street. It's less use of police officers. It's addressing graffiti. There's a lot of things that go into SEPTED, and I see probably 80% in what he was talking about in his first presentation, but I see, because I've worked with the city of Tampa, with South Beach, with Miami, Jacksonville, all the cities are having a SEPTED review before any planning is approved through the cities. So I see it almost there, but my question is it going to go there and adopt the state standards?
Thank you. If you can leave your contact information, well, we have it obviously, but that way we can get you a correct response unless one of you has a response now. Thank you so much. Is there any other public comments?
I think just to address quickly, the concept of good urban design and good planning incorporates those principles, right? The idea of eyes on the streets, of being pedestrian friendly, of creating a safe and walkable environment. We will certainly do a second pass at this to ensure if there are any guidelines above and beyond what we've already included, that we can make reference to those if that's the will of the commission.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Is there any comments from the city manager? No, sir. None? Meeting's adjourned.
Well, I do have a request. Kind of a summary of the changes that will be made from this meeting, presented alongside the new ordinance.
So we're going for a second round of this.
I don't need a second round.